Hey Fixers, I'm Dr. Jeanette Benigas, one of the co-founders of Fix SLP. Our platform exists to discuss the biggest challenges that are currently holding back the field of speech-language pathology. We present the issues with facts and invite you to be a part of joining this movement to make things better one conversation at a time. So let's fix SLP. Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Jeanette. We are without Preston today. The man took a vacation. How dare he? He's on vacation. He's told me I could send him the link so he could pop in. And I said, no, go enjoy your life with your family. So he's not here. But today I have Elizabeth Nielsen. She is of Tiny Voice Therapy fame, but she is also formally part of the Fix SLP team as, what did I name you, Elizabeth? Director of content? Of what?
Content coordinator, I believe.
Yeah, something like
Something
that.
fancy.
She is contributing very heavily to the content. We've done a lot of collaborations together. She is amazing with her digging and her finding. And so I wanted to have her on today because we've been talking about ASHA assets, specifically their land and their buildings, and, just poking around in numbers and seeing what's going on. So, Elizabeth, thanks for being on the team. Thanks for being here. Why
Thanks
don't
for
you
having
tell
me.
us how did we get on this topic? What led us to this in the first place?
So when ASHA originally announced that they were raising their dues, a lot of people were going on social media asking, where are these dues going? And then a lot of people were responding with, oh, well, they have their financial report listed on their website. So for me, I'm all about numbers. I'm a business owner. So I started to look at their financial reports. And that was back in February. And that kind of got me fired up. I couldn't believe the numbers that I was seeing. So then started looking at their 990 forms as well, just to get an even bigger breakdown, just because the financial report still had leading me more questions than answers. And we know with ASHA's transparency that they're not going to tell us where all these numbers are coming from. So that's kind of where I started to dig. So their financial report that they have on their website, anyone can access it. The one that really stood out to me was the property and equipment, the building and building land improvement being over $37 million. I was like, how are they paying for this? And so that's kind of what got me going into it. So what we've been posting about is their most recent building, so their fifth building that they built in 2007. Then I started to kind of dig around with the most recent building, and that brought up some articles on the ASHA leader about building their fifth building. And the one thing that stood out to me in the article, so this article was back in 2006. That's when they broke ground on the building. And the last part of it was that the sale of their fourth building was going to substantially pay for the fifth building, so the one that was built in 2007. So I started to dig around on that substantial number. I wanted to figure out, like, is this half of the building? Is this all of the building that they're going to be paying for? So then I really was going into a bigger rabbit hole with that. And so I looked up then the address of their fourth building. When that pulled up on Google Maps, it wasn't really leading me to anything. It was just like on the side of the road. So then I had to kind of dig around on the map and figure out, like, oh, it's a development now. There's houses on that property. So then I had to figure out who owns that property. And then I had to register myself with the Maryland State Records Archives. And then once I figured out who owned that property, then I was able to pull up the deed between Symphony Park and ASHA. And then that's when I found out that, so in 2010 is when that deal went through, and ASHA got $6 million for that 18-acre land that's now with houses.
And I'm going to pause you there because some of our content has caused a little bit of confusion, and that's fine. Like, people are scrolling and looking quickly, but I just want to say ASHA has not built those houses. Like we said in one of the posts, it
Right.
was to be used for private residencies. That announcement came from ASHA, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So that was on that same article in the
Yeah.
leader. That's Symphony Park. So
Yeah.
Symphony Park bought that 18-acre land. That belongs to Symphony Park,
Yeah.
those properties. So ASHA doesn't have like additional investments in real estate
Homes,
anywhere
private
else.
homes.
Yeah,
They're not building housing for their board members. There's not a compound for the CEO. No, none of that. It was sold free and clear. Symphony Park, that is what they used the land for, or, whatever. So just to clarify that, because we have gotten quite a few questions about, well, what are they doing with these homes? Not their homes. So they sold the land in 2010. And in
yes.
2007, I want to clarify too, they built the building that they are currently in, the LEED Gold certified building, 5 stories. That is the building they're in. They aren't renovating. We haven't reported that, but we've seen a lot of comments about, oh, and now they're doing renovations. I mean, they might be renovating. I hope not. But to our knowledge, they're not renovating. They are not building another new building. They are still in the 2007 building that was built. That is where they are operating out of, kind of ish. I'm sure we'll get into that. So just to put that out there very clear, they didn't build homes, they sold the land. They built a building in 2007. That is where they sit. That is what we're discussing.
And I think part of it was my fault of not sourcing all of those articles and the dates of everything. But I guess the point of that post was to really talk about the wordsmithing that ASHA does of like, oh, this selling of our previous land is going to substantially pay for this new building, the 2007 building. And that's where I found out it was only 12% of the 2007 building costs. So I wouldn't consider that substantial. Doesn't even pay for a down payment of 20%. So in that ASHA Leader article, they say that the cost of the 2007 building was going to be $48 million altogether. That include fixtures, furniture, all these things. So, only selling their land for $6 million, and then you're left with $42 million to pay for. Like, I don't consider that substantial. And so that kind of led to then just looking a little bit more on the 990 form. And so this form is from 2022. And this, again, what we recently posted was on their assets. So their building being over $37 million. The land that I believe then is the building that's on is 7 million. And then you go into the equipment. If you look at their financial report on their website, their equipment kind of gets broken down a little bit more. So you have computers and software is 19 million. Furniture and fixtures, over $2 million on furniture and fixtures. Software in progress development, $174,000. And then there's another equipment section that's almost $900,000. And then art and statues, they're paying $120,000 in art and statues.
Love that for them.
That's where our dues are going to.
And I did the math last night knowing we would be talking today. That's about $24,000 a floor for art.
Yep. Yep.
So I just want to shout out our colleague Ruchi, who made sure we had some of this information. Apparently, Elizabeth knew some of it already. It was like brand new to me because she's been taking care of this. So, yeah, great. We love when fearless fixers and colleagues and people who care send us source documents. So please send away, team@fixslp.com.
When I Googled the new building, the 2007 building, I call it the new building because it's just the newest one. When I Googled that address, it came up with a lot of lease information. Because in the ASHA Leader article from 2006, they also mentioned that their plan was to lease the 5th floor. I was digging around then. I saw that what seemed like all of the 3rd floor and then most of the 5th floor is currently up for lease.
Meaning there's no tenant. They're not making that revenue stream they were hoping to have to pay for some of these expenses.
Yes. Yeah, if you add up all of the leases that are currently available, it would generate $1 million a year. So that's $1 million a year that they're not getting. So it's not a reliable source of income for them. What's their plan? Well, we're a reliable income source for them. That's my assumption is, hey, we need to raise our dues because we need to afford this big building that no one's using. The CEO, the live chat announced like, oh, well, there's a due increase because we need to pay for things like paper. And that was all, just paper. This 1980, everything's electronic now. $5 million in paper.
And
Can we be transparent here?
to be clear, we're not saying that this is why they raise dues,
No.
but it certainly like get your spidey senses going. Everything's more expensive now. The dollar doesn't go quite as far. So yes, their expenses have gone up, but if they were already used to a certain profit margin and now that profit margin has been slashed and that they're not filling these, at least the one floor that they plan to lease out, and now they're trying to do two, there's a lot of questions unanswered. Again, they're not very transparent, and so that leaves people wondering.
Mhm. There's also another article that I found. This is from 2021 and talking about how ASHA is receiving like awards and recognitions for their telework. That even before the pandemic, they were having employees working from home. Then it leaves an even emptier building. I can even just quote right here in the article that slightly more than half, so they said 51% of ASHA's 292 staff members in the Washington, D.C. area teleworked up to 60% of their total work days. That was before the pandemic. Now, after the pandemic, there's probably even more. That percentage is probably even higher. And I know people have been also like asking about CEO exec salaries too. And I know you've kind of touched base on this, and in that area, their salary is comparable to that living situation.
When we see a salary like that, wow, that's what could I do? Like, I could do so many things with that money. But we've consistently said this from the beginning. It's not a good fight as to why we need change within ASHA and why we need more transparency. They're transparent about the salaries that are paid out. We know what people are making. And when you start to look, they are comparable. So it's not a good fight. We can't be like ASHA needs to give us all these things for free because the CEO is making this. Well, again, it's not a good fight. We have to have reasons for why we're asking for this kind of change. And so yes, while we do think it is an astronomical amount of money, it's not the focus of our platform or our fight. Now, if it was double the average amount, okay, then we have even some more questions, but we need to focus on other
Mhm.
numbers and other things that make a little more sense.
And that's why we are focusing on the building, because how are you paying for this building, this $48 million building, and millions of dollars in equipment and furniture and art?
Yeah.
I also looked up just to see like where their headquarters is, wages and things. And the one thing that pulled up is it's ranked 14 out of 273 cities across the US in terms of cost of living. It's estimated to be 135% of the national average, making it one of the more expensive cities in the US.
Yeah. And I've seen some comments, well, why don't they move it to a cheaper area? And that does make sense. Sell the building, move
Mhm.
to a less expensive area. However, there are people working in ASHA that live in Rockville now who have families and children and those types of, situations. And these are people at ASHA. So selling the building to move to a cheaper location would, in fact, uproot many lives and families. And I could see people say, well, that's business. I don't know. I start to get torn there when you're talking about uprooting the lives of families. We talked on a previous podcast that my dad was a pastor and he was a Methodist pastor. In the Methodist church, pastors are moved they don't get a choice where they go. And so you see that in their children, you see what happens where they're leaving their friends and their lives and their sports teams and things like that, their communities that they're building. For that reason, my dad was only part-time until my brother graduated. He was a full-time teacher, and then the year my brother graduated, he retired from teaching and went into full-time ministry because he didn't want to uproot our family, which I so appreciate. And so that kind of, and maybe that's why it hits hard for me a little bit too, is because I know the implications of doing that to families. Anyway, it's a business, but there are families involved here. But
Yeah.
they could get a
Yeah.
cheaper building within a commutable distance.
Well, and even if they're all of them are working from home then too, sell the building. We don't need the building.
Yeah. Let's talk about their DC location.
Yeah, so one of our colleagues also informed us that ASHA has a DC office location, which is 25 miles from their headquarters. The building is called Hall of the States. It houses big media and government organizations like C-SPAN, NBC. I couldn't figure out how big their suite is. So I don't know exactly what the cost of that office location is, but it just makes me question how a membership association is housed under the same roof as these government associations, organizations, huge media.
You can check out the post that should be up by now that we are putting a screenshot of that in the carousel. But when you sent me that, I was like, what is
These
going on?
prestigious, like on their website, even says they're these prestigious offices with high-end eateries and all these things. Like,
Why do we need to be there?
why?
So okay, I see we need I can follow the line of thinking. We need to be in DC because we need to be lobbying. Are we even lobbying to those organizations? Are we even in the offices of the people that we need to be lobbying to? No, no. So why do we need to be in that building? And neither one of us know the actual cost per square foot. We are guessing it is not cheap.
And
There's
so
got to be
there are
something
other
else.
like offices in that building that's like $67 per square foot. But again, we can't really guess how big that office is. But yeah, I
And the
don't lost
question
my
then
train of thought.
remains, who's working in that office? How often are they there? If most people are working from home, are we just having that space just to have the sign on the window? What's happening there?
Especially when they are only spending 2.2% of revenue on lobbying.
Right.
Yeah, I can do that from home on my computer. When someone said, "Oh, have you looked into their DC office?" I'm like, "Oh, that was not on my radar.
No,
Let me
me
do more digging."
me
So,
either. And then as the digging occurred, we saw there was an address for NISLA, and we that is within their Rockville building that was built in 2007. That is not a third property, because then for a minute I was like, wait, is there a third property somewhere? No, that's all in the main building.
so two office locations, 25 miles apart from each other. I mean, I used to do home visits. I drove more in that in a day in between clients.
You weren't prepared for this question,
Oh no.
but what are some solutions here? We talked about they could move to a smaller building. Do they need to have a building at all? We have that question. Do they need a
I
building?
I think obviously selling their building would be just a responsible business move. It's going to hurt them financially, but is it really? Because it's a big building. So I don't know. I like to think that we're all contributing to this bad business plan that they have right now with this huge building. And times are changing. This was built in 2007. After the pandemic, so many more people are working from home. And I think a lot of businesses are trying to figure out, like, do we need these office spaces? And that's why they can't fill these office spaces because everyone is working from home.
So I did some of my own research, and I wanted to see, like, I was looking for statistics and I was having trouble finding it. But there are some really notable examples of high profile companies that have made some headlines by selling their office buildings or really significantly reducing their office space. So X, formerly Twitter, did that. Salesforce, Zillow at least have announced plans. I didn't dig to see if they've started, but they've at least announced plans to adopt a more permanent work from home policy, and they're all adjusting their real estate strategies. And some of these buildings they're converting that large office space into housing options, which I thought was a really good solution to the housing crisis. I know out that way, certainly there's tons of apartments and it's a great idea. Why couldn't we do that with that building? So we're interested in hearing solutions from all of you. I think today is a little bit of a shorter episode, but we wanted to address some of this stuff out loud, and we want to hear from you guys. What are some solutions to this problem? We have a huge building that's barely being used, sucking tons of money. They're raising dues. Where do we go from here? How do we handle this real estate and asset issue? Certainly the $121,000 in art and statues could be sold off. And the colleague who sent us that, just as an aside, she said, I wonder if any of that art was commissioned, which, then is a lot more money than is reported. They've spent way more than that. I was like, good point. Yeah. But anyway, that's, all speculation. But yeah, what do you guys think? What do you guys think about all this? You've been telling us on the posts. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. So this was a little bit of a shorter episode today. We both have stuff going on, but we didn't want to leave you hanging without an episode, and we at least wanted to address a few things out loud. Elizabeth, thanks for hopping on. You are doing amazing work, digging in and figuring the things out and filling a hole in Fix SLP. Having a team, you've been amazing, and we all appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, that'll be it, guys. If you haven't yet, subscribe, 5-star rating and review. Let us know what you think. Let us know what topics you want to hear about, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for fixing it.